If you would like to
Yeah.
give the introduction, Ogechi, about Mr. Lee.
So I feel like super producer is something that people just throw out like and don't necessarily give the proper credits to. So if he has surpassed super producer into that ultra mega like you just not touching this man level, that's where Mr. Lee is, and just a legend of the South for Houston and Southern music. Like I personally at 22 did not know the extensive history of like your work, Mr. Lee, and it was like, wow, so this man just made that bot like just made that like that Paul Wall like what I was so excited, but that is who Mr. Lee is, from Paul Wall and Nipsey Hussle to Tupac, like you name it, this man has worked with probably everybody and anybody. And I remember
Yes.
some interviews he said, if you hot, I want to work with you. So period.
First and foremost, let's get into this first question. What are some of the things that you wish that the younger generation understood about creation and ownership of music?
Uh, I mean, the first thing is, especially ownership, is knowing, what it costs, what you've invested into it. All the time that you invest into this music industry, it's for the fame. The price that you pay for fame is expensive, and it is that way because if you work, I've been working in the music industry 27 years,
Mhm.
and when you put in that type of time into anything, and when your time is up and you reach your peak, and you find yourself not owning anything, there's no residual income for you, no publishing back end, no nothing, then that's a terrible situation to be in. I think a lot of artists don't know the importance of the process. The fame and the lights and grabbing the jury and having a record label chain on your neck, that's cool. But when the moment is up, all of that stuff is returned and you don't have anything to stand on for all of the time that you spent. So you have to kind of weigh the fame and the logic of business and find the medium. Because at the end of the day, we're in 2020, so the average person, a person that sells independently 10 to 15,000 copies per project, is making more money than a person that's selling a million.
Mhm.
So owning and ownership is very important, and then really taking the time to hone in on your craft and having the passion for it, and not just doing something just to run out there and get something done is something that I wish they would understand the process. Because if you understand the process, then you understand what being a creator really is. A lot of people follow a trend, and if you jump on a trend and you luckily enough to hop on it and catch that ride, that's fine. But when the ride is over,
Mhm.
then you have to figure out how did it happen. And if you're really not a creator and you don't horn in on being a creator, then you get lost.
I would say you mentioned the process a lot, and like as a young artist, they always say trust the process, and that is something that is very much so like hard to keep in, especially as you're going through a lot of trials and tribulations. And so one thing I wanted to ask was, what was your process? Like what did the process look like to you as you were first starting out to getting to the legendary status that you have today?
Uh, the, it's simple. You have to learn how to follow before you can lead.
Mm.
I was a student and I'm still a student. There has to be a teacher and a student somewhere in this process. A lot of people, I hear it all the time. It's a lot of words that get slung around carelessly in our industry. It's boss, legend, all of this stuff. A lot of that stuff is loosely used. And I think that it's losing its value because people are not earning those positions and they quite frankly don't even know how to. That's why things don't last as long as they should. Excuse me. The average career now these days will last anywhere between 3 and 5 years. I've been doing it for almost 3 decades. So that tells you, I mean, if you're really a student of the craft and you're open to learning things, then you will continue to grow. When you don't, then you lose the whole view of what it really is that you were trying to do. And that's kind of proceed and better yourself, but you can't better yourself and you can't improve on anything if you don't learn it. And if
Mhm.
there's nobody to teach you that. So, I mean, being a boss, that's fine. Everybody wants to be in that situation to be a boss, but you have to learn how to be a boss. You don't just jump up and be an entrepreneur. You're a worker first. Then you figure out what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Then you apply what you've learned and become that. And I think that that whole process has been mixed up like a set of dominoes right now.
I see.
Mhm. I agree with you on that.
So talking about process, what type of people do you enjoy to be in studio with outside of like them being great artists or great people? Is there a particular like a something that that this person is a student and I know that they're students, so I want to work with them or any other like type things?
I like to be in the studio with people. The first thing I like about being in the studio with a person is a person that's going to push me musically. That's not just going to be, okay, this is Mr. Lee, and just let me do whatever I want to do, and they accept it without challenging my creativity and say, hey man, can you do this or can you do that? And I like a person that is open minded to where we can both vibe together and come up with, create some things and take and bounce ideas off each other. That's what I really like. I don't like to be in the studio with a person that just want to enjoy a moment with me because of who I am. When I
Mm,
get in the studio, we all equal then. You know what I mean? So I like to have that type of mindset. I like people to push me creatively so that we can make the best thing. I don't want the yes men around me. So I really want somebody that's gonna say, hey man, you know what, that beat is cool, but I'm not really feeling that shit. Can we do something else? You know what I mean? So that's what I look for.
oh,
Okay.
great.
All right, ask one more question, Ogechi, and then I'm gonna get into his new projects.
I don't think people really recognize how influential the South has been on music, period. And so I want, as someone who was born and raised, I believe, in Texas, that's what it is.
Louisiana.
Can you talk about what the energy is like of the South?
I mean, I think the most important thing about the South is that the South is a like a melting pot of a lot of people. That's why we have a large audience on the West, a large audience in the Midwest, and we have influences in the East Coast as well because everybody has roots in the South. Believe it or not, you know what I mean? From all these regions, there's somebody in the South somewhere that has an auntie or a grandmother or a grandfather or a cousin or somebody that lives in the South. So when the summertime comes, all the people come from the East, Midwest, and the West to visit their family in the South, and that's how we have this big gumbo of music. For me, I've just been able to do the things that I do because I'm creative enough to mix all the stuff that I grew up around. And in the South, for me, it was gospel, blues records. I was classically trained pianist. I played in orchestras when I was in junior high and high school. So I have so many different blends of music background that I'm able to apply when I'm making music.
Okay, that sounds amazing. So, speaking of projects that you have a gospel project coming out. Speaking of gospel music.
Right. Yeah,
Hmm.
I have called Glory that's coming out. Is to me personally, and I don't say this a lot, but I think this is one of the biggest groundbreaking records that I've ever produced in my entire career, really. It's
Hmm.
taken me back to where I started, but the innovation that I put into this project, it's able to reach a person that is over 65 and is able to reach people that are under 14,
Hmm.
that they all to this music at the same time because I've blended everything together the way it's familiar to all ages. And it's just the message that's behind it and the energy of the records are really, really dope. I listen, actually, this is the first time that I probably produced that I'm able to jump in the car every day and listen to. All the records that I produced over my years in the music business, once I'm done and when we've mixed it and everything is done, I don't ever listen to it again. Unless it pops up on the radio or something like that, I'll never listen to it.
Hmm.
But this record, I listen to every single day.
Okay, that's amazing. I can't wait to hear it. And what other projects are you going to be coming out with besides the gospel project?
I have another album called Forever that I'm working on right now. People that have talent, and I'm taking those artists and I'm putting them with artists that I've worked with over my tenure in the business, and giving them a platform and opportunity to be heard on my production. And that's pretty much what my whole floor plan is now. I'm going to into being a kind of an executive now, so I'm actually on pace now to drop about 3 projects a month. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to be giving a lot of people opportunities that don't have any money, don't have any action at doing what I'm doing, or being in a situation with me to have that opportunity to not only rap on one of my tracks, but rap with one of the people, some of the people that I've worked with. You know what I mean? So it's given a lot of people opportunity to get that light and to have that opportunity to be on a platform that they probably would never had the chance to be on in life.
So how are you finding your artists for that?
I'm just sending out messages on Instagram, and that's when I really found out how powerful I was when I did that before, and I got like 300 messages. My inbox was so full. I was like, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do. My email was overflowed with people sending stuff, and it was really talent. There's a lot of talented people there, so that's the easiest thing for me to do. That's why I'm gonna be able to drop so many projects because it's so easy to get good talent, and people are open to sending music.
Drop your IG really quick for everybody too, so they know how to get in touch with you on Instagram if they wanted to send you something to check out.
Right, my IG is Mr. Lee 713. My Twitter is Mr. Lee 713, and my Facebook is Producer Mr. Lee. You can reach me on all three platforms. I answer every message that comes to my inbox. So if you message me, you will get a message back.
Awesome. I try to do that too, especially with the unfiltered messages. You'll go in there and you're like, dang, I missed all these messages. Hope it's not too late. So artists that you have previously worked with and the opportunity for these artists to work with them, that's big. But I do know that you produced Nipsey Hussle's Blue Laces 1 and 2. Is there a Blue Laces 3 in the works?
There is a Blue Laces 3 in the works. I've been working on it way before Nip died, and it's pretty sentimental to me because the track that I made, it was already picked by him. We already kind of went over the subject matter of what we are gonna do with it and all of that stuff. So it's an incredible way to you know give my final contribution to his legacy by doing this track. And I know that this would be something that he wanted me to do. I've been knowing Nipsey since the late 2006, and watched him grow from the ground to where he was at. We were good friends. He called me uncle. I called him my nephew. So I mean, it's definitely something that I'm definitely gonna make the greatest record that I can make out of this whole situation.
Yeah, well, rest in peace, Nipsey. We're all still pretty devastated over that. I don't really feel like that I'm over. Somebody was asking what was the death that affected you most in your lifetime. Of course I didn't answer because I don't have time for that. But I thought in my head and I was like, yeah, it's definitely Nipsey Hussle. It's definitely.
It's Nipsey for me because I was so close to him. The Kobe situation was devastating
Oh
to me.
yeah, and yeah, between Kobe and Nipsey, yeah, definitely, definitely, it was awful. Yeah,
Because he's from Houston, and I crossed paths with him a few times, and just to see something like that happen to somebody that you knew, it felt it was a totally different effect. So yeah, that was crazy. Like the Nipsey thing was really crazy for me because I saw him gasping for his last breath and stuff like that, and it was really like
so you
crazy.
were actually there?
I wasn't
Oh,
there. It was
okay.
it was sent to me while I was in the studio.
Oh god. Ugh.
Yeah, like that Thursday before he died, I spoke with him, and I was there a week before he passed, and we didn't meet up because he was doing stuff and I was doing things, and I was like, dude, you always busy. I just meet you when I come back, and the next weekend he was gone. You know what I mean? So it's devastating for me. I don't go a day without thinking about him because he used to call me all the time and text me and be like, "Hey, it's top of the morning. What's going on? Send me some music, or I got an idea," or just even just to say, tell me how great our relationship was and how he just loved what I do and all of this kind of stuff. He was always complimenting me all the time, and and just encouraging me. I don't even know if he sometimes he would say things to me at a time that I really needed to hear something, and
Yeah.
I would do the same thing for him. That's just what type of relationship we had. So
Mhm.
it's crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
that he was good like that. He would do that for everybody. We wouldn't even be expecting that, and we were just people that didn't know him. So I could just imagine what it would be like to be away on this interview. But I guess I am. So moving along, let's finish up with a few more questions, Ogechi.
All right. Well, one of the other things I wanted to talk about was just how are you dealing with COVID like 19 in riot times, especially going down in Atlanta and other places of the country. Do you feel that the way that at which the protesters are moving is something that should be continued, or do you have your own belief set on how the movement should progress?
I'm a '70s baby, so I experienced getting eggs thrown in my house. I experienced racism firsthand, going to school and all sorts of things. So I've lived through a lot of that. But what is happening here is that racism is meeting a whole new generation of people that have not really had to see that and heard the stories of parents going through stuff and you know people getting that's like two generations down the line is getting hung and all of that kind of shit. They haven't had to endure that. So when they get an approach with it, the resistance is much greater because they're not going to accept it.
Hmm.
I think it's a great thing because this generation of kids now, the '90s babies and up, they ain't trying to hear that. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like, what? Okay, we're just gonna march and we're gonna tear everything up until y'all get right. You know what I mean? Now it's a lot of things coming to the light that are changing, and I think it's a great thing. But I think a lot of it is forced. I also feel that I hope people are realizing how important minorities dollars are to all of these big conglomerate entities that we are protesting against and blacking out against. Our dollars really mean something and it's showing because they're taking a lot of stuff down. They are, you know, taking a lot of the flags from the indie race thing is like crazy. But I think that should have been done. But I
Hmm.
just know how important economically we, the minority people, are to this country. So, now we're fighting with our dollars, we're fighting with our mouths, we're fighting with resistance and everything else. And a lot of people looking at it like, oh, they're just tearing up stuff. It's not that they're just tearing up stuff. They've had enough. So anything that's in a way of supporting something that is not on the right side is getting looked at. You know what I mean? For me, I applaud them. I think it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of belief to get out there every day and protest and sit around and especially in this time with COVID-19 running rapid throughout the air and all of this stuff, it's a lot of brave kids out there and young people out there that are really fighting something that should have been fought like this the whole time.
See, I see. Let me try to put you into a scenario as if you were at the front lines of one of the marches and you had on the left side are the microaggressive, racist, non-racist white people who really don't know what's going on the left. And then you have kids of my generation, the 90s babies who are angry and want to hurt these people who have been microaggressively racist our whole entire lives, just from school to being on the playground. And as if you had a speakerphone and all of them had to be quiet and listen to just you, what would you say to both sides?
I will basically tell them that it's time to start over. A lot of us been taught and we've been raised around foolishness and we're really not looking in the eye outside of our own eyes to see exactly what it is that we're looking at, to know that we're not each other's enemies, especially when you have white kids that are growing up that are '90s babies just like the black culture in the '90s. They ain't lived through all of that. They just hear the stories. They are
Yeah.
taught that. They not doing that from experience. They doing that from being taught that. So I think I just made this post the other day that it's easier to not condemn a person and teach them a different mindset than it is to try to force them in a different mindset.
Mhm.
That makes sense. If you teach a person something, then they can learn from it and change. But if you try to shame and condemn a person,
Down and not really listen to anything. And I see that a lot in my generation, just being sick of being talked down to by people when we're sitting here like, well, I think that I know something about life too. So
Mhm.
so
Well, it's a
yeah,
different perspective, you know?
definitely. I think my last question, just because I watched a lot of your interviews before this one, and you are very much so a very wise man, and I know that comes from not just age, because there's a lot of people who are your age and older who are really dumb out here. So I want to know if you have any like religious or spiritual practice that guides you through like times like this.
I mean, I was raised in to be a Christian. You know what I mean? So but I have my own way of using it
Hmm.
and my own way of applying it. I don't necessarily think that every single thing that we've been taught is absolutely the truth.
Hmm. Now you're talking.
I don't.
Mhm.
We come from a different culture, and I'm open-minded enough to know that. And I do know that all countries and areas they serve some type of God, but it's not necessarily the same one, or they don't serve it the same way. So I've learned throughout my years. I used to be like, oh, atheist. Oh man, I don't know about that. Or and other stuff. Now I'm more open-minded to it because everybody have a religion and a purpose that they use in life. So I'm way more open to it now than I was before. Definitely.
All right, team. Rick's
Yeah,
Queen.
I agree with you on that religious type stuff because it's like the older I get and the more that I learn, whenever somebody tries to say, well, the Bible says this and the Bible says that, I don't know. It's just like with the research that I've done and the archaeological evidence that's there. I mean, we know more about Egyptians than we do about a lot of that stuff, because the everything was still there. But with that being said, it's an allegory, and to sit there and base your argument based on something that the Bible says, it just lets me know that you're not even in the type of mindset to even like talk to me if everything that you say is going to be based on a Bible that tells the Adam and Eve story and they believe that for absolute fact and not allegory. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
The thing about it is that everybody read any book and you can find a way to explain it 100 million different ways.
Exactly.
And people take a lot of different things out of the Bible and they apply it the way they want to apply it. It's just like I seen where a guy was like, "Oh, burning sage is evil. It's satanic." And I was like, "Dude, anything can be satanic if the purpose behind it is."
They said
It's
that
like,
Black Parade, they said that was black magic and setting spells. That's what they said.
Y'all don't
stuff like
Because of what she
that.
said about what she said, the IFA stuff that she said. And it's just like, oh my
using
gosh,
ocean energy in your
you've been
Maya.
programmed to think that your original religion of your ancestors, not even just your ancestors, but everybody's ancestors, because the archaeological evidence and the DNA evidence is there. And we know where Adam and Eve really happened at and everything. So to sit there and
Yeah,
say that the original belief system of our ancestors is black magic and witchcraft just goes to tell you who put that in your head.
That's colonial mentality that Falafi
Exactly.
is talking about.
Oh
people
yeah,
that goes,
exactly. And then the thing about it though is that people forget that Christianity was really big in 1,000 years ago in Ethiopia, even bigger than it was it wasn't even actually when Christianity was in Ethiopia, everybody in Britain were still savages.
hmm but it just goes back to being taught a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
That's if you said and you don't read, even if you read the Bible, you will learn different things in it. A lot of these preachers they preach things and they quote scriptures, but they take them and they translate those scriptures into their own belief system, and I don't agree with that. You know what I mean? I don't see some of this stuff that they say in this Bible. I don't see it in there. I take a verse or a chapter and they paraphrase it to what their belief system really is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have to be very careful who you allow to lead you because you can be led into something that is not absolutely.
Yes, exactly. And there's different, you don't have to think that the original language of the Bible, the Aramaic language, cannot be translated word for word. And you have to think about how many different times it's been translated. We don't even really know what the Bible says.
Yeah.
They've taken
Exactly.
out so many books.
The Bible, the Quran, another one
All
that is
Yeah,
very
they probably, yeah, I don't know much about the Quran except for the stories about Jesus, but yeah, I'm definitely sure that they probably did the same thing.
those are the tangled too. The Bible and the Quran they tangle up in each other. You know what I mean? Farrakhan teaches from the Bible just like he does the Quran.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Same thing with Hebrews. It's like the big three. The Hebrews, they teach about well, the entire Old Testament is the Torah, so.
mhm.
All
So there's
The New Testament popped up.
three or four cultures we just named, and that's all tangled up in that.
right. So
One,
before we get out of here, Mr. Lee, do you have any release dates for any projects that is coming out?
I don't have any release dates yet, but I'm shooting for like July for the gospel album, Forever is probably going to be coming right after that. But you know, everybody could just stay tuned to my social media, to my Instagram and Twitter, and my webpage is mrleonthetrack.com. You can get all the updates from there, and you know, we be just be dropping music, album after album after album, once we start going.
Okay, dope. And a lot of independent artists follow this page. Trust me, they send me 300 emails a day. So I'm gonna divert some of that traffic over to you, Mr. Lee. Thank you so much, Ogechi. We'll catch you next time. Rugo Radio.